Hey there, YouTube. American Time Machine here. I just want to do a quick update about Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I do care about this game. I promise I do care about this game to some degree. And I think a lot of players recently have been very frustrated by the game in general. And it's not just that the game is hard to get into, it's that the players that have been around for many years, I've been playing this game for about 6 years now, and now the local scene, my local scene individually, and the local scene really around me in Pennsylvania, it's kind of died. There's not much going on outside of larger like tier 2 events. So it's that feels frustrating. Now it feels like I really have to travel in order to do anything. But we'll go ahead and get into it. I think for this video I want to talk about the deck building problem in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, because obviously Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it has a lot of problems. Being that a tier 0 format is here, and sometimes tier 0 formats are just not very exciting, and it's not very good for brand growth in general. And I think that's what they want to do. But Konami kind of has this problem where they're trying to profit off of what they do, but they're looking so close to the short term. They're trying to make everybody happy money-wise, and they're trying to make their board happy money-wise, that they're just focusing on selling each individual set after set after set. And that has kind of had a snowball, like igniting effect that seems like it's just going to send the whole thing up in flames at one point or another. And I think we're kind of seeing that they're selling a lot of products, but event turnout definitely is not what it could be. You're seeing, you saw a lot of event participation over the last few years in general, but now it seems like it's really fallen off, and that's one thing a lot of players aren't talking about. So specifically today, we are talking about the hand trap problem, though. We have a lot of decks that are having such a great engine at the center that we have decks like these that are playing, no joke, 17 hand traps. So if you wind back a couple years ago, there was a spiral format that not a lot of people liked, but there was a major event, and Simo has a video on this, where one player took a Goki deck. And one of the most fantastic things about the title is that he was bragging. Simo was essentially bragging, or very surprised, that this deck was playing 18 hand traps. And that was like a major, major surprise. And everybody, if you were playing 18 hand traps in your deck at that time, it was like, what the heck are you doing? You know, it doesn't sound like anything even remotely acceptable. Now we're in a tier 0 format, and that tier 0 format, the standard deck, not a rogue deck, not something crazy out there, is playing as a standard 17 hand traps. And so the question I think this begs of a lot of players, is this interesting gameplay? I know the common argument for hand traps is that, well, you need them to stand a chance going second. Why shouldn't you play them? And that's actually just not true. About all of these cards, there's nothing printed on any of these generic cards that says you can only activate this if you go second. What functionally ends up happening is that the turn player who wins the die roll, often they'll set up their combo, and then they'll keep a couple hand traps in hand. So no matter what the deck is, if you go second, you always have that fundamental dilemma of you're analyzing whether or not you can play into the board. You may think you can play into the board, but inside your head, you're like, well, what if they have Ash Blossom? What if they have Droll and Lockbird? If you commit to the board, then what happens is you reveal information, and you cannot telegraph whether or not your opponent has the hand trap. If they have the hand trap, you played into the board, and then you exposed everything about your playstyle. And now game 2 becomes way more difficult because the opponent knows what you're playing. Whereas in the other situation, you may have figured out that you can just scoop and increase your odds of playing against your opponents in game 2 of that round. So these hand traps aren't really good for that aspect of the game. They don't actually help you play going second. And if you draw into them, sometimes they're kind of useless anyway. And so now we have this dilemma to where every deck is becoming just a compressed engine, and that engine itself is very oppressive, and the hand traps surrounding it essentially act as semi-floodgates, or just one-for-one negates that don't necessarily add to the interactivity of the game in an interesting way. Specifically, at least we can say specifically with Droll and Lockbird. Droll and Lockbird is a floodgate, and I don't like it when the community specifically doesn't acknowledge that Droll and Lockbird is a floodgate. So I think the best argument against any of these hand traps, for sure, is against Droll and Lockbird, because obviously there's nothing very skillful about its activation. You wait until your opponent adds a card, then you activate it. So you can't even skillfully activate Droll and Lockbird. Ash Blossom has been in the format for many, many years now, and it's been kind of a meta staple for a long time. And the thing about Ash Blossom is Ash Blossom is also so generic that it covers basically what 3 hand traps can do in one, and so there's almost no game where Ash Blossom can't at least be useful. And so I think Ash Blossom would be, out of all of these, the next ban-worthy card. And I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Also has a generic negates problem. Because the game is so centered around monster effects, if you have cards in hand that just one for one negate a monster effect, that also could be very unhealthy for a format and not make it very interesting. There's been numerous videos about the healthiness of cards saying negate. Well, if you can just reach into the extra deck and point and put up generic negates, and that is seen as unhealthy, what is so much more healthy about a card that you just draw in your hand that automatically gives you playability that says negate? 1 for 1, discard, negate. That doesn't sound like something super exciting, and it's also not going to be something that sounds like it's healthy for gameplay. So we are heading into formats that basically have 17 cards that are all going to look exactly the same. And then you have a company like Konami that's wondering why it can't grow its player base. It's multiple answers, of course. One of the answers is that the game still does have a high mental barrier for entry. It takes a long time to actually learn this game, even if you think you're really intelligent. If you think you're really intelligent, but you've never played Yu-Gi-Oh!, you're going to have a harder time learning this game than learning chess. And at least if you know the game of chess, if you learn the game of chess, you're probably going to be able to use your skill to win against your opponents. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of those games where even if you are the more skillful player, sometimes your opponent just draws Droll and Lockbird and Nibiru, and you just lose. And that happens a lot more frequently than I think a lot of people would enjoy. You want that balance where the game is fun and you want a chance against better opponents, but you don't want that being so pronounced to where you can just draw the sacks, and that's what the game comes down to. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Has multiple dilemmas right now, but this specifically is about the the hand trap dilemma, because this is becoming an uncomfortable part of the game. Really, I think if there was someone at Konami HQ that was handling the ban list that really knew what they were doing, these things also don't help Konami sell product. They don't. All these cards were printed many, many years ago, and none of them are particularly expensive in helping them sell current sets. So the argument that this is necessary for Konami to make money, I don't think that argument holds any weight either. If anyone knew what they were doing at Konami headquarters, they would get over. If it were just purely about making money, they would ban probably most of these cards. Specifically, just the ones that say negate and have been seeing a ton of play. Infinite Impermanence, Ash Blossom, Droll and Lockbird, and Effective Veiler. I think at least those have very strong arguments to why they should not be included in the game, because they are seen on so many deck profiles. And Jesse also has another deck where he's going through a Marinsis profile, which is rogue, but also playing somewhere in the realm of 15 to 17 hand traps. I don't think if that's being included in our rogue decks, we probably don't have a healthy game. So right now I'm still playing the game occasionally, not necessarily at a competitive level, and part of that is because the competitive scene just kind of disappeared in a 100-mile radius of me. I can travel to Philadelphia, and that's pretty close, and do a regional there, and if you know anything about that regional, apparently there was lots of stun and burn going on in that regional as well. So there's a lot to unpack there, and I don't want to make this video too long. And if you liked this video, don't even subscribe to this channel. Go check out the music associated with this name, because I just care about this game. I do these videos for fun. I want to end it there. I'm just going to click out of here just so I can press the pause button and stop. All right, peace, guys.